Well, hello. This is Doug Dubay with Recasens USA. And today I'm here to talk with you about the visual properties of textiles, and in particular, outdoor textiles. To start things off, I want to let you know that I am not a scientist or a true expert in these areas, but I've been in the textile industry, outdoor fabric industry for a lot of years. And over the years, I've learned and picked up a lot of stuff and thought maybe I'd share it with you and maybe you can find it interesting or helpful when you're selecting and using textiles. So, to start with, I wanted to get into a little bit of science about light. And light is actually a wavelength that comes from the sun. And the sun's emitting tremendous amounts of solar radiation in the form of wavelengths that are being sent out constantly from the sun. These wavelengths, they are different lengths, and the energy level is lower as the wavelengths get wider or longer, and higher energy as they get tighter and closer together. And different wavelengths are in different categories. The widest are the radio waves, AM, FM, TV waves that you might be familiar with. And then you get into the infrared waves, which is heat. And then you get into a very narrow spectrum of radiation or wavelengths called visible light. And then you move into the ultraviolet, UVA, UVB, X-rays that you're familiar with, like when you're taking a picture of the bones in your body. And then at the very end, the most high energy gamma rays. Today, we're going to talk about visible light, and that's the narrowest spectrum, but the one we're most familiar with since we're looking at light and different colors of light every day of the week. And the light, the solar energy radiation that hits our Earth is only in this narrow range from UVB all the way to the infrared. And we're fortunate, very fortunate, that the sun's atmosphere blocks out just about everything else. Of that radiation that comes through, about 9% of that energy is UV radiation or ultraviolet light. 42% of it is visible radiation or visible light. And then the remainder, about half of it, is infrared radiation, which is heat. As these rays, this radiation travels through our atmosphere and down to the earth, once it hits something, there's only three things that can happen. The light and energy can either reflect back away, and that's what we see as color. Some of that energy can actually be absorbed into the material, and that's what converts into heat energy. And then the other option is that it can transmit through the material depending on the composition of that material. And that would be light like through a screen or something like that. Now, it's primarily the visible light and infrared wavelengths that can be absorbed into the fabric or whatever the other material is. And when that happens, that turns into heat. And I've got another webinar that talks about that. But today, what we really want to focus on is the reflected and the transmitted light. And certain constructions of fabric allow light to transmit through it. And this can be a very positive thing when you can control the amount of light that passes through a textile. It controls your thermal comfort, your visual comfort, how bright or dark it is in a room or a patio, and just contributes to the overall comfort of your living area. It also affects your visibility back through the fabric depending on the construction or weave of the fabric. So we're going to talk about some of those things today. And of course, the color matters. It's an aesthetic for us. We all like different colors and find it more appealing and comfortable to be around those colors. What that is those visible light wavelengths reflecting back off the material or the fabric and coming to our eyes, and we perceive it as colors. Um, Different fabrics reflect, absorb, and transmit the light differently. And some of them also allow light to transmit through the fabric without letting direct rays of light. There's sort of a glow about the fabric that allows certain light to come through to the other side and casts a hue similar to the color of the fabric on the area on the other side of the fabric opposite the sun. And this can sort of change the ambiance of the area. And we'll talk about that some later. But it gives you a lot of neat options when you're dealing with fabric. As I was saying, the fabric color completely changes the brightness or ambiance, especially when you're talking about under an awning. And it affects your psychological comfort level and how you perceive the temperature underneath when and space is darker. It just naturally sort of psychologically feels cooler underneath it. And then it also affects your comfort of your eyes from eye strain as well. So if you look at some of these other awnings in different colors, you have sort of a mid-tone awning on the left there. And you can see that it's a nice amount of light. It's still bright and airy and pleasant underneath the awning. And in this circumstance, there's a lot of undergrowth and trees to the side. So there isn't a lot of glare coming into the side. So it's nice to have a fair amount of light coming through the top of the awning to keep things bright and pretty. On the right side, you see an awning that used a darker color with a more opaque pigment that really darkens the area under the patio. And to my eye, this looks like a pretty warm area where this home is. And by using the darker area awnings, it makes the patio area darker and seems psychologically cooler underneath those awnings. And because the dark awning has a lot of air circulation around it, they probably don't feel the radiant heat from the darker fabric underneath their patio. So it's a good selection for that environment. You can check some other examples here, and you see a simple, I don't know, that's forest green or black and white stripe with a true white on it. And you can see that a lot of light is allowed to transfer through. They've nicely coordinated the awning top with their cushions, so the area looks coordinated in the living space, and it has a nice, fresh, lively light underneath it. To the right, you can see where they used a warmer stripe pattern, warmer colors, brighter colors on the awning. And you can sort of see the yellowish, warmer hue underneath the awnings that sort of warms up that living space. This is often done in northern areas of Europe where the weather's cooler and frankly, the weather's a little more dreary and cloudy and not so bright. And what they do to liven up their living space or outdoor living space is they pick stripe patterns with brighter, bolder colors like yellow and orange within the stripe that cast those brighter, livelier hues down upon the patio area and just livens up the whole area, makes it look more cheery, but also sort of makes it feel a little warmer too. So when you're picking your fabric, keep in mind the kind of environment you want to create and the surroundings, you know, the kind of materials in your home, your walls, your furnishings and ground coverings, that coordinates nicely with all that. So it has a cohesive look to it and is visually appealing for those that are spending some time in the backyard with you. So anyhow, the fabrics give you a lot of options as far as awnings. When it comes to screens, it gets even more complicated in that you have screens with different colors and different openness factors. And if you look on the left side here, you can see a screen with a 80% shade factor and one with a 90. The color of the mesh is the same, but the open weave gives you better visibility. Of course, it blocks less of the sun's energy, but you get better visibility. Another thing to keep in mind when you're selecting these screen fabrics is the sheen or gloss of the yarn itself. And if you get a mesh fabric that has a glossy yarn on it, many times when the sun hits that, the diffused light bounces off the sides of the round yarn and causes some reflection and glare from the fabric itself. And that can impede the view through the fabric and cause added eye strain. So you can keep that in mind. And then if you go with a lighter color as opposed to a darker color, the eye draws itself to the lightness of the fabric and has a very difficult time seeing through it to the outdoors. So even though the shade factor of a light fabric and a dark fabric might have the same shade factor, the visibility outdoors is going to be far better with a darker fabric. The downside is that if the dark fabric is inside your home, the light's going to hit that dark screen and it's going to turn into heat instead of reflecting back out off of a lighter fabric. So anyhow, this is a nice example of an exterior screen that sort of maximizes the visibility. It's probably just a bug screen, so it's got a very open weave to it. It's a dark color, so your eyes aren't attracted to it, and it's almost like the mesh isn't there. This is a handy little chart that shows some of the good aspects and bad aspects of different kinds of colors, dark screen fabrics and light colors. So if we go through the different situations, if you're trying to get a lot of natural light into your home, dark colors, if it's a mesh fabric or a solid fabric, let far less light into the house. Diffuse light in a mesh situation, in a plain woven acrylic or some other solid fabric, very little light gets through. Your light colors, a lot of the screen itself sort of brightens and lightens up. Fabrics tend to sort of glow, and it lets more light into the house. If you want outdoor visibility, again, the darker colors are excellent. The darker, the better. And light colors, the brighter it is outside and the darker it is inside the room, the better your visibility will be. But there'll be more circumstances where the visibility outdoors won't be as good with a light colored mesh. And then of course, if you're using a tightly woven fabric, visibility won't be good no matter what the color is. When it comes to glare control, dark colors are better. Just keep in mind whether the finish on the yarns is matte or gloss, because you will get some more glare and off the glossy yarns as you would a matte finish yarn. When it comes to light colors, if it's a mesh fabric, you've got the direct light transmitting through the holes in the fabric. And then on top of that, you've got the just the reflection of the white light color as well, creating more glare. When it comes to night privacy, a screen that's completely private during the day might not be private at all at night. So if you're looking at mesh fabrics and want night privacy, even with quite tight weaves, you don't have complete privacy. It's sort of like a theater. If it's dark outside and bright in your room, people can see into your home pretty easily. The light colors are a little bit better, but still, I wouldn't be comfortable in counting on you having privacy. In the day, as long as it's much brighter outside than it is inside your room, you should have a good level of privacy. If you want complete opacity for like a bedroom when you want to sleep during the day, or a theater room, they make fabrics that are completely opaque, that don't let any light through. Another solution would be a darker, tight woven textile like an acrylic that would really significantly darken the room and pretty much completely eliminate the glare. And when it comes to visible properties of a fabric, most of these solar screen fabrics have detailed information about the optical factors of the fabric and the thermal values of it. You can look at every single color, from a light color that, as you can see, glare control isn't all that great, whereas darker colors are very good. The higher number, the better. So anyhow, when you're selecting fabrics for these different applications, be it for an awning or a screen, you want to have something that's beautiful to the eye, but you want something that's thermally comfortable and visually comfortable as well, so that you don't have eye strain, and gives you the view when you want it and need it, and the privacy when you want it and need it. So by working with this information, you can make an informed decision that you'll be happy with for years to come. So I appreciate you listening. I hope you learned a little, and next time we'll be doing a little presentation on UV protection in textiles. So join us then for that. Thanks for joining us.